Yeah. Do you need? I'm ready. Are you ready?
That was so unenthusiastic. Sorry. I am in a better place.
You ready? Hello, and welcome to Middleish, the podcast about moderation in all things. I am Erin Green.
And I am Michael Gray.
Good morning.
I was gonna see how long you'd wait.
I'm jumping right in today.
Weird
Let's
long
get
pause.
to talking.
8 seconds of silence.
I'm
good. How are you?
I get to say good morning. For you, it's good afternoon, but I guess I should say good afternoon because for you, it's good afternoon. But hello.
You should meet me where I'm at.
I should. I know. I need to be better at that.
I'll say good morning, Erin. I'm all right. It's been kind of a weird week. We had that hurricane hit.
Another one.
Yeah, so it hit on, today's Wednesday, so Monday night. It was a tropical storm and then upgraded to category 1, like kind of right as it hit. And it hit us hard, like at 1:30 in the morning. And girls were terrified. It was crazy loud. The rain was just insane. And the wind was like, we live on a cul-de-sac, so I don't know if that was it or if it's just the way it was like kind of churning in our house, but it just sounded like, like there's like the crash of thunder and then like just the roar of thunder. It was like the roar of thunder. That's what the wind sounded like. Just constant. Almost. It was wild and it was very unnerving and hard to get back to sleep. And yeah, it was kind of, a little scary, just being like, okay, hi, Mother Nature. We have no control over you.
Risk of flooding and everything? I mean, I'm sure there's risk of flooding anywhere, but were you guys in a location where you were worried about that?
Around, but not us. So our neighborhood has, I don't think ever flooded, like even with Hurricane Harvey, like what was that, 6 years ago, whatever, that was like devastating. Yeah. Water levels were like up the driveway here, but never in homes. So, I mean, I'm not going to say we're safe because I'm sure at some point something even worse than Harvey is going to happen. Yay. But for the most part, we should be okay as far as flooding goes, unless there's, like damage to the house and water gets in or something. But
I'm glad you guys are okay and your house is okay.
We have some fence damage, so we might have to replace our fence, which sucks because it's the longest stretch of fence we have, of course.
Of course it is.
And good thing lumber prices are so low.
I know, right? Good thing there's not a shortage of anything right now.
Yeah. But other than that, just super duper.
Doing okay.
How are you?
With your Frankenstein ears or whatever. Mm-hmm. What brand are those?
You only don't think yours look weird because it's more commonplace.
No, mine look weird. I still think they look weird. I put them in and I'm like, oh, geez, they look like little alien antennae coming out my ears.
Yeah. You know what I've spent like way too many minutes every day for like the last week doing is like figuring out like, do they sit better? Because they sound great and they feel comfortable, but I feel like, should I turn them a different way?
Maybe
They're Skull Candy. So they're a good brand.
Okay.
But they
look like little gumdrops in your ear. Skull Candy.
I have a hard time spending $100 on headphones. I'll just be honest. I'm like, I don't blame you. Going to. It seems, I know it's probably 100% worth it, but I just can't bring myself to do it.
I don't have a problem doing it as long as they last a long time. I'm definitely not one of these people that just buys. Yeah, I know. Right?
They're going to wind up in the toilet or something. Like it's just
in a mud puddle or covered with sticky fingers or something.
Yeah, jelly or chocolate or something. Or something else. You just never know. Something that looks like chocolate.
Kids find things to smear. Anything that they can be smeared or it's generally
I went to get in the tub 2 nights ago and like on the edge of the tub there's this big brown streak.
And God.
What is this? I have no idea. It's that game I've talked about before, chocolate or poop.
Is it poop? Are we going to guess or are we just going to grab the bottle of cleaner and
That's what we did.
Thing down.
Let's not play the game. Let's just make the game end.
Oh dear. Oh boy.
So,
what a fun game.
Yeah. It's a super fun game. One of my favorites. Especially when it's on like clothing or towels and you're like,
oh geez. I think you told an earlier episode you talked about that too. The chocolate or poop on a towel.
Super fun game.
Well, I had a very fun weekend full of celebrations and friends and being outside and hanging out with Matt and good food and just overall it was an awesome weekend. We have our wedding anniversary and my birthday 2 days apart. And this year is the big 40. So
40.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Happy birthday, Erin.
Oh, thank you. And I have been asking Matt for like the 13 odd years that we've been together if he would throw me a surprise party. I would love a surprise party, like to truly be just like jaw on the floor surprised. And okay, Matt is not capable of lying, really, even if it's like a white lie or for the purposes of a surprise party. So
man, that's too bad.
There's that. And he kept telling me, he's like, well, if we do it for your 40th, you're going to guess. You're going to know something's up because you can't just have a milestone birthday like that and not have a big party. And I was like, well, then don't do it for my 40th birthday party. Like throw me a birthday party like in a totally different day or month even, do something
or
totally
a half
crazy.
Birthday party.
I know. All kinds of ideas, right? So he tried, but there were a couple developments that sort of tipped me off that there was something coming, and I knew there was something coming, but I will say that on Friday evening, I knew it was Friday because my friend that was trying to get me to do a quote girls night was kind of in on the whole. Matt initially was like, we're going to have dinner with her and her husband. And then, the husband's out of town. So, Carla wants to do girls night. Like it was kind of just fishy. So I knew something was coming, but I was still just on the edge of my seat all night leading up to when is the big surprise? Like, where is it? Are we going to this, place and it's going to be here? And then I saw a few friends that happened to be at the place. And I mean, I just was like, where's it coming? Where's it coming from? So yeah, it was a delightful surprise. And I have to say that I didn't realize how much I needed to be in the same space as other humans that I love and that love me and just share that. It's so different to know that you are loved and to have that interaction, text or phone, or, to just like make a walking date with somebody outside because of this whole pandemic thing, but to just have like people in the same space. Yeah, it was really meaningful. And it just underscores the whole balance of trying to figure out, navigating the, health safety considerations of the pandemic, along with all of the other aspects of health that we need, including social, emotional, kinds of things. And so, anyway, it was great. And Matt had Monday off, which was my actual birthday. And so we got to go for a hike and made dinner together and watched some football and, had a kind of a lazy morning. So we did all of the fun, relaxing things that you get with a birthday weekend.
Excellent. Yay. Sounds super fun.
Thank you.
Welcome to 40.
Thank you. Yeah. One of my friends said, welcome to the 4th floor. I'm like, I like that. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh God, I'm doing it already.
You had a thought.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah. Isn't it like this whole pandemic thing has really, I think showed a lot of us, but like me in particular, just like how important those interactions and connections are that I never really realized. I mean, I'm much more of an introvert than an extrovert, right? Like social things, I can enjoy them, but they also kind of take stuff out of me. I'd rather stay home and be alone, like that's my jam, than go out and be with people. But at the same time, having a lot of that at home alone, I realized I could go, okay, even though I'm an introvert, I still need like these connections and I need people and I need to like see people's faces and experience their energy when we're in close proximity. Like there were just like things like, oh, even though I could rather stay home a lot. This is really important for me and my mental health and emotional health. And it's really brought that to light. Yeah.
Yeah, it's and again, just to piggyback on what you said, I don't think you realize it until you have a dose of it, and all of a sudden you're like, "Whoa, okay, this was missing." Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and got to see. The best part was I got to see people that I honestly haven't seen for a couple years that were so integral to my Boise, my move to Boise, back in 2007 when I first got down here from college and was finishing up school, and I didn't know anybody, didn't have a friend network, and a lot of those people were there. So it was really fun. Yeah.
Well,
So
shall we dive in?
yeah, I mean, I have a segue. I'm 40 now.
Segue away.
Give me 5 to 10 years and I could be getting close to the menopause.
The menopause.
The thing. I know.
Dun, dun, dun.
Oh, I like that you changed the inflection at the end because I was going to chastise you for making it sound like dun, 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 like this, danger thing. Dun, dun, dun. Like you have the spotlight on you and like you're on stage, and this is actually a very natural and can be a good thing in many ways. So
I do wonder how often, like how many times in an episode you think about chastising me.
Well, I probably would chastise you if I really wanted
to chastise.
I probably would say something if it was really that bad. So I don't think I do. No.
Okay.
You're a good guy, Michael. You're a good co-host. I like this.
Well, yeah, I wasn't saying I'm not a good guy. No, you're decent, Michael. Like, yeah, okay. I know. I wasn't saying that. It's being a smart ass. Jeez. No, I don't hate you.
Oh dear. No chastising going on.
Good. Okay. This is a chastise-free zone.
Chastise-free zone. And
so far.
Yeah, so far. And I think that actually is a good segue too, because the topic of menopause honestly tends to be this. I mean, female reproduction in general or female health issues tend to be taboo or glazed over, or maybe even with like a super negative connotation. I can't tell you how many like PMS jokes I've heard, or, like just vulgar terms for women being on their period, or all of these things. And then with menopause, of course, it's like, oh, quote, the change, or, whatever. I mean, you have to kind of call it something else that's a little more neutral, because we can just call it what it is, menopause, which is a natural and inevitable change that women experience. And
I think, sorry.
I was just going to say, for you men that are listening, don't just think that just doesn't apply to you because you're male and not going to go through menopause. You are going to indirectly experience menopause if you have a woman in your life in any capacity. So I think this is important for everybody to be aware of and to hear.
Sorry, what'd you say? I wasn't listening.
God, because you have the gumdrops in your ears. That's why.
Yeah. These aren't headphones. These are just like rubber stoppers. Like I stole from a science lab. You were going to say something when I cut you off. Yeah, something really profound. So I think, I wonder if a lot of the reason, because you're right, like it is like kind of a taboo thing that isn't talked about a lot. And I wonder, I have a suspicion, and maybe I'm asking you too, your thoughts on this. If at least a large part of the reason from your perspective is that menopause introduces things that create a real challenge to what we are told is supposed to be the point of diet and exercise, right? Like there are real conflicting things. Like if we're supposed to just like get smaller and weigh less, and then menopause happens, man, it's this real challenge to what you're quote unquote supposed to do. And if that's the whole point, right? Like that's what diet culture tells us, get smaller, get smaller, get smaller. And now we have this thing that is inevitably going to happen for any woman, right? Or most women, I guess. then like, how do we reconcile those two? How do we navigate those two? And it's a like a phase of life that I think is often ignored because that doesn't fit the narrative of what the point of quote unquote being healthier is.
Right. Yeah.
And I think there's such conflict there that a lot of people just completely brush it aside because I don't know how to tell you or how to coach you or how to instruct you to continue to just get smaller when all these changes happen, because it gets really tough. And if I can't do that, and that's the entire point of everything I do as a coach, I don't want to touch that.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a reason why it's often sort of neglected and passed over, is because it doesn't fit this narrative of what we think, getting healthier is supposed to look like. And that's not on you, the listener, right? Like that's on the fitness industries and the diet industries for just being absolutely ridiculous and harmful.
Yeah.
But,
And having that, I think you're exactly right, that having that very specific notion of not just physically what people should look like, but maybe how into it they should be, how much energy they should have, what kinds of exercises they should be able to do, and the kinds of things they should be able to eat, or all of those things. And then on another way I've heard this described is more on a broader, and I'm not going to get too far on my soapbox here, but a broader like patriarchy kind of thing. Like women are supposed to be, looking this way. We're supposed to be dainty. We're supposed to be fertile. We're supposed to be like, whatever society says we're supposed to be. And menopause, perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause, which we'll go through here in a second, those 3 stages bring women to a different realm. And all of a sudden, those societal expectations and what we are supposed to be is flipped on its head because there's all of these changes that are happening. And so I think that's another reason people don't like to talk about it, because they put it into this negative, very negative space. Like, oh, you're leaving that perfect, expectation of what a woman should be, and now you're going to be this other thing. And I don't know how to talk about that or address that in any positive way.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a real sense of like, you're no longer what you're supposed to be. And now you're this complicated thing that just kind of doesn't work right, which is completely wrong. Right.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if you're in menopause, that's where you're supposed to be. And sure, there are things that are absolutely frustrating, suck about it 100%. Right. Like I know it can be very hard, but that's also where you're supposed to be. And fighting that, there's just a lot of frustration and hopelessness there. There really is, like,
or feeling like you should have more control over it than you do. And we'll talk about some of the options, because there are options, like hormone replacement therapy and different things that people can do to slow the progression of menopause or to ease the symptoms. At the same time, I think there's so much pressure put on the way you should just be able to manage these things that are going on, I ate this and it fixed it, or, oh, I started doing this and it fixed it, or, oh, my friend told me this and it fixed it. And that may not be your lived experience. And so,
and there's nothing to fix.
No,
like it's not a broken thing.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's like a transition from like, hey, you could be a mom if you wanted to, not anymore.
Oh, and I just listened. I'm going to tell you about this podcast I just was listening to earlier from a researcher, what's her name? Jen Gunter, she has a podcast called Body Stuff, and she just wrote the Menopause Manifesto. And to your point, when menopause occurs, so we should probably just define, like, perimenopause is when your hormones, and then I'll get back to Jen Gunter and talk about the child rearing bit. So don't let me forget that. Sorry, y'all, we're going to backtrack a little bit. Okay. So perimenopause is when the transition begins. And this can be, the full process of menopause can take 7 years, can take 14 years, anywhere in between. Some are shorter, longer. It's highly individual. It's also, talk to your mother, grandmother, aunts, women in your family who have been through menopause and what their experiences were, because chances are your experience could be very similar, or you might at least have some idea of what to expect there. But perimenopause is when periods are becoming disrupted. There are some wide hormone variability. So, estrogen and progesterone are not produced in the same cycle as you've had through your menstrual cycles your whole life, basically. And then we get to this point where periods become spotty, and the hormone fluctuations become less and less predictable and less cyclic until you reach menopause, which is where your body stops producing estrogen and your period has not arrived for 12 months. That is when they can actually say, like, okay, you've gone through menopause. That doesn't mean that you won't actually have like some kind of spotting or some other hormone fluctuations. It doesn't mean like you arrive, yay, we're done. It just means like that's how they define where menopause is. And then postmenopausal is the point after, okay, you've reached menopause. Postmenopausal is you might still have some of those symptoms, which we can get into. So those are kind of the three phases. And I'm keeping to just the basics because there's a lot of like hormonal descriptions and different things that you can, look up and research, but those are the basic three phases. And just know that it takes a long time. It's different for every woman, with some similarities within your genetic line. So,
yeah. Okay. Did you want to get back to Jen Gunther?
Yeah. So, what she just talked about with the history of just the human species and evolution, grandmothers played a vital role to the survival of the family line. So grandmothers in the hunter-gatherer days were actually providing like something like 90% of the caloric intake to the family because they didn't have to be there to rear the little babies. They could be off gathering, nuts, seeds, nutrients, whatever, plants for people to eat. And in order for grandmothers to actually reach their grandmother phase and not their mothering phase, they have to go through menopause where they cease to have reproductive capabilities. So I just thought it was really interesting how you phrase that like, okay, this is your body saying like nature is telling us that it's time to move beyond the reproductive years into this new chapter. And there's some historical evidence that supports that if not for grandmothers back in like the hunter-gatherer days, we might not have that same proliferation of our species. So kind of interesting.
Yeah. And that was body stuff, you said?
So I actually listened to this on Jen Gunther is the author of the Menopause Manifesto, and another podcast that I listened to with Celine Yeager. She was a pro cyclist for years. She's just an author, a scientific researcher. She has a podcast called Feisty Menopause. If you look on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, the little logo will say push play, not pause. And she was interviewing Jen Gunther. So that's how I heard that little story. But I will link these other episodes in the show notes, y'all, because some of these doctors and scientists go far deeper into some of the research than we do here.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, that'll be worth checking out. You want to talk through a little bit of symptoms?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go through that. So common symptoms, right? Like just kind of reading the list down is, spotty periods, mood disturbances, hot flashes, vaginal dryness, sleep disturbances, decreased libido, heart palpitations, headaches, fatigue, weight changes, a lot, right? And then, we can see like, reduced energy, we can loss of strength and endurance, just our physical capabilities can decline a little bit or be more difficult to maintain. Can have higher food cravings. There's a lot that can go on. And so there's my point in just saying all of those things is there can be a lot that's introduced in relatively a short amount of time that you now have to manage in different ways, right? And that can be a highly stressful thing. Even if you take not just specifically menopause, but if you have life change in a lot of ways, right? Even externally, these are internal changes, right? But externally, internally, whatever. If we go through a period where things are very different in a variety of ways, it can feel very overwhelming. And it can feel like a real struggle to like, I don't know how to be in this new space, right? Like in my own body that's done so many changes, or my environment that is so different now, or my circumstances, whatever. And I don't know how to navigate it. I don't know who I am. I don't know how my body responds. I don't know what to expect. And I think when we go through those changes, you know, in general, but specifically in menopause, I think it's really important, like we talk about all the time, to enter this with a lot of grace and understand that, you know what, I don't know what to expect for me personally. I have an idea of what this is going to look like from like symptoms and that kind of stuff, but I don't know how I'm going to fit in this. I don't know what's going to work for me now. I don't know what has worked before that is no longer going to. I don't know what I'm going to like or not like, right? And so I think there really has to be, if we're going to navigate this well and in a healthy way, I think there has to be a real openness to, okay, I need to be prepared to let things go that have worked before. Even if they worked exceptionally well, they may not anymore. I need to be open to adopting new things that maybe didn't work before, but might now. I need to be open to just exploring these new spaces and who am I in them, and really approach it with a sense of kind of curiosity, you know, of like, what does this have for me and who am I going to be in it? Because if we enter this with like, I have to control this, I have to minimize everything, things that worked before have to work now, things that didn't work don't get to work now, like with this, just like this real insistence of how it's going to be. I think our stress about it is going to go through the roof, and we are going to feel consistently out of control. And I think there is an element of lack of control here, right? Like things are happening that we don't get to dictate, that we're not in charge of. So if we can begin to look at and find and discover and apply things that do give us a sense of control, like I can't control my hot flashes, but here's some things that help me manage it. I can't control my moods, but here's some ways that I can help manage it. And if we can look at it from that perspective, I think we're looking at a lot better way to go through this potentially long period of life, right? Like a segment of life that's 5, 10, 15 years. That's a good chunk of our lives, right? Like that's more than all of our schooling years. That's a long time.
It's like 10 to 20%, depending on, you know, what your lifespan is. I mean, that's a big chunk of your life. And
if we spend that whole time fighting,
we're
going to be exhausted and frustrated
and also being wallowing and unhappy about this thing that we don't have control over. We're going to share, you know, a few strategies of, you know, diet and fitness and mindset kinds of things that will help you cope with some of this stuff. But I think, you know, hearing that list of what Michael just said just helps to really set the stage that menopause truly impacts the entire body system, not just physical. I mean, most women will acknowledge hot flashes, sleep disturbances, and weight gain. Those are like the main three that at least that I hear a lot when I work with women that are perimenopausal or menopausal. But I think there's just so much depth to the process of menopause within the different body systems that it is important for people to acknowledge that some of these things that you know, like libido and like your moods and just, you know, maybe even physical things, you realize like your heart rate and heart palpitations and different things, headaches, you know, all of those that might crop up at different points in your day or your week, or points throughout the year when you're, you know, trying to, you know, maybe execute this specific plan that you were given or that you were told to do, really show yourself some grace with all of this. I think one of the other things to acknowledge is the shift in our metabolism through menopause, because what's happening hormonally impacts our ability to retain muscle mass, which the loss of muscle mass is sarcopenia. So I'll use that term when talking about this. But if you are constantly just expecting yourself to be able to maintain a certain body size or a certain body composition that you've always had, and you have these hormones that are, and I say sometimes, you know, we have some of these changes that are working against those efforts. not to say that it's impossible to lose weight or it's impossible to, be lean or muscular or any of those things during the menopausal years, but just know that your hormonal system is adjusting your metabolism, your fuel utilization, your fat storage, your muscle building capacity. All of those things are being adjusted for you, and for good reason. And I mean, this is part of the process of aging, and your body has to conserve energy in different ways. There's some evidence that says that a slight bit of weight gain that we experience as we age is actually protective of longevity and health, because it actually gives your body a little more reserves on board that it can pull from in case it's needed. So we can't always look at these shifts as being a negative thing. We don't like weight gain because we've been taught not to like weight gain.
Yeah, because weight gain is bad. Okay, but is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a real important. This is an area I struggle with constantly as a coach. Is that
you're gonna get mad? Michael's getting. No. I can see the
fix the
there
hat.
Goes the hat adjustment.
Was that on air that we talked about that?
Yeah, where Michael does the hat adjustment when he's getting ready to kind of blow out a rant, and here we go.
I don't know if it's going to be a rant. I don't think so, but I guess we're going to find out. Is that line of weight loss and wanting to lose weight and helping a client lose weight and reinforcing these beliefs that that's an important part of being healthier, right? Because it's often not. And we've talked about this before, but we've conflated the ideas of getting smaller and getting healthier as the same thing, right? Mm-hmm. And they often aren't the same thing. But so when we go through menopause and all these things become more challenging that we've been trying to do, right? I think it's really worth asking, or considering that continuing to try to do the same things, not even necessarily the same ways, but having the same objectives of a certain level of leanness or body composition or, scale weight, whatever. That pulling this out of my ass here. Okay. But I think there's a really good chance that continuing to do that through menopause is going to make menopause a lot worse, because you're not tending to yourself. You're not taking care of yourself and managing the things that need to be taken care of and managed. You're trying to do something that is sort of, one, may not even be necessary at all in your life, right? Two, might just be more appropriate for the phase you were in and not as appropriate for the phase you're in now. And that's not a bad thing. That's just what happens. And I think if we can manage our expectations and shift our expectations going into, menopause, pre, and post, then I think we're setting ourselves up to manage menopause a lot better and have it be a lot less stressful situation, because otherwise we're kind of fighting this inevitable thing, and there's a good chance we're fighting it for reasons that have nothing to do with our health. And that's a rough place to spend 15 years.
Yeah. And to your point that you just pulled out of your ass, it's a very common trajectory for a lot of women to follow when they start seeing these physical changes, right? The slight weight gain, especially around the midsection, which is a direct result of the hormonal shifts that you're experiencing in your body. We see dietary restriction. We see getting on different elimination diets and trying new ways of eating. We see this drive toward just doing lots and lots and lots of movement without making it purposeful or higher intensity or, really stimulating that muscle synthesis. So we see some of these typical practices in women going through menopause. And I mean, just on the lines of dietary restriction, if you are fasting for longer than just a, your average overnight kind of fast, if you're intentionally sticking to this intermittent fasting sort of pattern, this isn't for everybody, but for the majority of women, this is going to put you in a state of catabolism, meaning you're breaking down which is akin to this sarcopenia word we just heard, where you're losing
muscle
muscle.
loss.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've got these two systems that are kind of dovetailing together, where you're intermittent fasting, you're not giving yourself enough calories to sustain body mass, and your body is experiencing sarcopenia just from aging and from hormonal shifts. So all of a sudden we have this, maybe your body might get smaller from that. But what are the consequences? The loss of muscle, the loss of bone, the loss of strength and energy to do the things you want to do in life. So, and not only that, but then we see with dietary restriction, maybe you're not getting enough calcium anymore. And we see that osteoporosis becomes a huge risk, especially in that postmenopausal phase where we don't have the estrogen anymore to help protect our skeletal structure. And so getting the right dietary sources, vitamin D, calcium, protein, are super important. Okay, what about some women will go into like restriction and they won't get enough protein. Well, we need that to help retain the muscle mass. So then there's that issue. And then what about like micronutrients like magnesium? You're missing out on magnesium. Well, guess what? That helps with sleep. So all of a sudden, we're kind of working against ourselves with all of these symptoms we're experiencing because we're trying to restrict just to get smaller. So to your point, Michael, if people are really like, that is the end goal, is just to keep my body this little petite, small, the same size I've always been, lean, whatever it is, and you're only after the appearance of it, take some caution, because you could be leading yourself down a path of, less optimal health by doing that.
Right. And what we're doing is we're taking an already stressful situation, because even in the best of cases, and if we just accept it, it's stressful. Everything's different. And it's like, what is my body doing? Best case scenario, that's going to be stressful. So we've got stress going through menopause, right? Then what's our approach to quote unquote manage it? Create a bunch more stress through restriction and frustration,
spike those cortisol levels.
Yeah, and part of menopause is increased sensitivity to cortisol. So it's like even worse. So we're taking a stressful situation and just exploding it with our expectations and demands and preconceived notions, all this kind of stuff. And man, I mean, it is a complete, I think, wrong way to approach this. I get why there's that inclination and that desire 100%. But if we're really looking at being healthy and managing this process in the best way possible, our knee-jerk responses of what to do are probably not the way to go, because we're just going to increase the stress on us, just tenfold. And we're so much more susceptible to, we including myself, you're so much more susceptible to cortisol, which is a stress hormone. It just released through stress,
Yeah. And I think it's important to talk about here. Okay, so what are some of the things you can do? We've talked about like some of the things we see that people do that don't work for them, or that tend to work against what you're truly trying to accomplish. So I mentioned hormone replacement therapy earlier. I am not an expert on this, and I have a whole mixture of friends and family that have either chosen to do that or have not. I think it's a really important conversation to have with your healthcare provider and some people in your life that you trust who have, been through it and have experienced it, because there's a stigma with women seeking out hormone replacement therapy. I mean, for a variety of reasons, there's some health concerns that are valid. There's this stigma about not doing things au naturel and not being like that, strong, vibrant person that can just do things off of, nature's wings. So there's all of these, kind of, discussions that need to happen, and to know that whatever you choose to do will be the right decision for you. And I have known women that truly are debilitated by the symptoms of menopause, truly. And it goes on for, think about this, y'all, 7 to 14 years, and maybe longer, depending on when it starts for a woman. So this is a big chunk of life that we also have to balance quality of life here. So I'm saying this in hopes that people are willing to have this discussion with their healthcare providers, do some research, and at least consider all their options. Now, beyond hormone replacement therapy, there's also adaptogens, which are now, have you ever heard of adaptogens before?
Yeah, but I'm not
Michael?
real familiar with them.
So they're naturally occurring in various plants and herbs, and mushrooms have some. There's some names. I can link a couple sources. There's actually a really great article on the VA website that talks about adaptogens and the different, you can buy them in supplement form. I'm of course a food first kind of person, and so I'm encouraging people to try and find them from food. It's a safer way to ingest those kinds of things because you are getting them in a mixed nutrient profile, if you will, and so it's not just this concentrated, like, tablet form or something that you're taking. But things like soy that has phytoestrogens, there's Shishandra and ashwagandha are a couple others that you can find in certain mushrooms and herbs. So anyway, another thing to investigate. I'm not going to tell you one way or another whether you should do it. I just present the information and let people know that, again, there's an option for you.
Yeah.
What else do you
do you
encourage or hit on?
Yeah, you want to get into just kind of some ways to kind of manage things? I mean, I guess that's kind of what you were doing, huh?
Mm-hmm.
So, menopause is something that I haven't, worked with a ton of clients, like a huge percentage of my clientele, but it's been a very common reoccurring theme, right? And it's one that can be, like we've talked about, just really frustrating for people because it's easy to feel like I'm not in control. I'm kind of at the whim of this change, and I don't know what it's going to bring this afternoon, let alone tomorrow. Like it just can feel very much like you are not in control at all. But I think if we approach it with some strategies that we hold loosely, and I'll talk about why that's important in a minute, to go forward, I think we really can gain a sense of some kind of control, right? I mean, I have this belief that, and I've talked about this with clients a lot, that no matter the situation, like when we're in situations that feel out of control, if we can identify things that we still can control, then we can have a little bit of grounding, right? We feel like we have our footing a little bit, and okay, I'm on top of these things and I can manage this. So I think if we could start with that kind of approach, it can be easier to kind of weather all these changes. So some things that I think are important is to continue to stay active. Like physical activity is critical for a variety of reasons. One, like Aaron talked about, with sarcopenia, like, so estrogen, lowered estrogen or minimal estrogen, byproducts of that are going to be losing lean muscle mass and not burning body fat as well, right? So that introduces this shift in body composition. That's why it's very easy when we go through menopause for like body fat to come up and muscle mass to come down. Okay, so one of the best ways to combat that, menopause or not, is if we continually to stay active in weight bearing kind of ways, right? Like strength training. This cues the body, hey, you know what? Like we're utilizing this muscle on a regular basis. Maybe we shouldn't shed it so quickly. Maybe we need to kind of keep it around. Okay. It helps maintain it. It may help develop it some. That's going to be wildly independent. Okay. But there's a chance. It's also going to help your mood, right? Chemicals are released when we work hard that just help us feel good. Okay. But I also think it's important within that, as we try to stay active and have a plan, that you're really flexible with what that means, because there's a really good chance you may have the plan of going to the gym and doing a lower body day, right? And you're feeling good. And by the time you get there, you're toast.
Not feeling good. Yeah.
And energy's down. Okay. And so if the only option is to do what you already had planned, it's probably not going to go very well. And you're probably not going to feel very good. And it's probably going to be an unhealthy thing for you and counterproductive. And I think it's really important that you have this flexibility of, hey, I thought I was going to do this. I don't have it in me. So what can I do instead? Right. this might be a good time for just some stretching or some mobility work or some light yoga, something that's still moving your body, but it's not super taxing, easy to recover from. And also it might be the best call to go home and rest,
Right.
Sure, activity is really, really important. That doesn't mean it's always the best choice, right? It often may be, but it probably always isn't. And if you need to go home and rest, you go home and rest, because that's the kindest thing to do for you. And that's the best way to manage menopause in this moment. Right. And so I think a priority on continuing to strength train when appropriate, when you have it in you, when you got it, is really important, because that can help manage some things from a variety of different ways.
Don't you think there's kind of this avoidance of like true strength training exercise by that age group, by this, older female menopausal age, in the 40s to 50s to 60s? You just don't see a lot of it or hear a lot of it, no matter how much everything that I have read, all the peer-reviewed literature that talks about combating sarcopenia, talks about muscle protein synthesis, talks about actually combating some of the other effects of menopause, like brain fog and different things, that strength training is huge. But you don't see it. Like, what do you think?
Strength training, like legitimate strength training. Yeah. And you do see that a lot, because what are programs that are designed for senior citizens look like? It's like, okay, let's sit in your chair and let's use these little balls and light bands. And that may be appropriate. I'm not knocking that at all, because if it's appropriate, it's wonderful. But I also think a lot of people in that age group are capable of a lot more. Yeah. And I mean, when I lived in Oregon and was doing primarily in-person training, I had a huge percentage of my clientele that was like 60 and up. And the benefits they saw from working their asses off was insane. Yeah. Right. Like I'm talking about like 65, 70, 75-year-old people who are squatting and deadlifting and rowing and, all pushing sleds with 45, 90 pounds on them and working hard, not in dangerous ways. And that doesn't mean they're throwing, a barbell on their back, but they're holding dumbbells in very safe ways, in low back friendly ways. Right. And they're deadlifting in friendly ways, because guess what? You got to deadlift. You got to pick up your shoes and your groceries, right? That's a deadlift. So, I really feel like the senior citizen population really misses out on a lot of continued health. And there's sort of a resignation to, well, I'm old now, so, whatever. Yep. And that's just not the case. I mean, I look at my parents, who I've been training for, they're in their 70s. I'll say that. I won't call them out exactly, but they're in their 70s, and they have friends who are the same age. And they've been working with me for about 13 years, close to 13 years. And the difference in their physical capabilities to their friends,
it's profound.
Yeah. I mean, they have friends who have a hard time getting up off the couch. Yeah. And my parents are riding bikes with my kids and running around and playing tag. And I mean, just doing all kind of rolling around on the floor and getting up and, just things that their friends could not do. Right. And it's because they've worked hard and they continue to work hard. And sure, like numbers may creep down with weights as they get a little bit older, but they're pushing what they're able to do. And that it impacts health in so many ways. And it's such an underutilized piece of fitness for that population that is really, really critical. Sorry, I kind of got way off from menopause on that.
No, that was great. And I'm reminded of, in my exercise physiology class in college, my intro to XPhys, our professor was talking about, helping retain muscle mass in aging populations. And he brings up, this study that looked at these different exercises, different ways to stimulate the muscle, different types of movements, whether it was explosive, whether it's isometric, all this stuff. And he goes, guess what? The researchers decided was the best number one recommended exercise for somebody who's 70 to 80 years old. And we're like, oh, riding a bike or, something that's like very low impact and protects the joints. And he goes, it's the hang clean. If you can get someone to do a hang clean, okay. And for those of you who
Mhm.
are not sure what that looks like, just Google it, look at Olympic lifts. It's basically taking a barbell and doing an explosive kind of movement where you are snapping that barbell up,
Mhm.
and it involves your entire body.
Yep.
So it's from head to toe, and it's explosive, and it's like engaging your back, your glutes, your legs, your arms, shoulders, everything.
Mhm.
And we were all just fascinated because we're sitting here, as students, we're like, this is something that like Olympians do, in their 20s or something, but we should be doing this with older populations. So just to rewind back to, we are talking about the menopausal age. This has value, though,
Mhm.
talking about, how do we really combat the aging process? Because that's what we're talking about here with menopause. It's
Mhm.
part of the aging process. And
Mhm.
we do see it just seems to mark this point in a woman's life where we see a pretty significant shift in the aging process with how your body handles exercise, food, all that
Yeah.
stuff. So yeah, I love everything you said about do the exercise that feels the best and is right for you, and make sure that you're getting some strength training kinds of
Mhm.
things in there, and be consistent with it, as consistent as you can be. I
Mhm.
realize there's going to be, gosh, what did we say? Sleep disturbances, headaches,
Mhm.
fatigue, night sweats, like all of these things.
Yeah.
And you're not always going to feel like being active. If you
Right.
commit to doing something every day to move your body physically, and then really grab hold of those days that you are
Mhm.
feeling pretty good,
Yeah.
make use of it.
Yeah. And I think I'm glad you made that last point, because I think that is often looked at as inconsistency, right?
Mm,
Like, oh, I was going to go to the gym today, but I just feel like I needed to rest. I
right.
would argue that's how we build long-term consistency, because if you went to the gym on that day and you pushed into places you didn't have in you, this is going to negatively affect you for possibly days, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you rest and honor your body and give it what it needs, guess what? You're probably going to have more in you the next time you're able to hit the gym. And so I think that is actually a way to have greater consistency and have stronger workouts when you're able to get to them, is rest when your body needs it and honor what your body needs.
Yeah. And the
Yeah.
same can go for dietary practices. So,
Yep.
just we talked a little bit about adaptogens and some of those foods. I listened to a great interview with Leslie Bonsi, she's one of the fairy godmothers of sports nutrition. And she was on the Feisty Menopause podcast talking about plant-based diets and, some of the nutrients of concern with those. So protein is a big one because we need protein in order for our muscles that are being stimulated by that strength exercise to actually make the most of that stimulation and retain that muscle mass. So you need protein for that to happen. And if you're going down the road of eating less, maybe skipping a meal because you're not very hungry or because you think that you need to restrict in order to lose weight, if you're going into a plant-based regimen. And I should say, we talked about plant-based diets, one of our episodes last year, I think.
Yeah.
Plant-based really just means you're eating
Was
more
that
plants
last
than
year?
it was last year, I think.
Oh man, we've been doing
You're
this a
the
while.
you're the episode Rolodex. You usually have that up and you can tell me where we are.
That's frightening.
I don't know. Anyway, if you're going into that more plant-based realm, which has a lot of really great health benefits, one of the downsides is it is more challenging to get enough protein, and you have to
Yeah.
look at like the volume of food that it takes to get that amount of
Mhm.
protein and all of those things. So just be very cognizant of what kinds of nutrients we need to get enough of. Again, if you're restricting dairy for whatever reason, then we might have a calcium vitamin D issue. I'm a proponent of vitamin D supplements for most people just because it's really hard to get enough from food, and we tend to not make enough, even in the summer months from the sunlight. And so
Yeah. We don't spend as
that's
much time
another one.
outside either.
Right. There
Yeah.
is evidence that omega 3s can help kind of combat some of those symptoms that we see in menopause. So that's something you could think about. I always encourage people
Mhm.
to eat, the fatty fish and get their omega 3s that way, but you can supplement with that if you prefer. And then, I mean, there has to be something put in there about just eating adequate calories because often
Right.
often people will restrict to the point where they're like, I'm only eating 800 calories a day and I'm not losing any weight. It's probably not what's happening. I think what tends to happen is you might track for a couple days and only restrict yourself down to 800 calories. And then it's so hard and it's so frustrating that you throw the app away or you stop tracking and you just eat all the carbs because that's what your body craves when you're starving. So
yeah, exactly.
Look at those kinds of practices too.
Yeah. How long have you been eating 800 calories for? And just for the record, 800 calories is insane. Don't do that.
No.
Yeah, that is what happens a lot. It's like, oh, I did this for like 4 or 5 days. And then I had that day where I hit fast food twice, and I'm not going to track that because I don't want any documentation of that. Right. And then I get back to 800 calories and very sporadic. And yeah.
Another thing I want to hit on is carb restriction, I think can be a big challenge we talked about cortisol levels earlier. If you are restricting carbohydrates regularly in women, we tend to see there's a cortisol spike, especially like in that morning time. If you have a morning workout and you don't eat before the morning workout, we tend to see that cortisol levels will raise even higher than you started with. Furthermore, if you're restricting carbs, you're likely restricting some high fiber foods that would be really, really good for your digestive system. And digestion
become important
changes.
For colon health, right? As we age.
Totally. And for energy, just for having that energy to go and do the workouts we're talking about, for your brain to function off of, because our brains love carbohydrates. They run off of glucose. Yeah. So, we see some of these tendencies for people out of desperation to change something because what is currently happening to me isn't what I want to happen. This is where, we need to, look at the whole picture of health. What are some things that are worth managing and that will benefit us? And what are the things that are not worth, you could call it managing, but I would say fighting, and are just energy sucks because you're not able to directly impact what's going on in your body. So it definitely is kind of this balance between like, okay, what are some things that I can do that actually help with this aspect? I'm going to set this aspect aside for a second and just focus on this and being consistent with this thing.
Yeah. And build that consistency, true consistency, because it's really worth, just trying stuff randomly here and there often gives us a sense of like, well, I tried it and it didn't work, when really what didn't work is that we just didn't do things consistently enough. And it's really worth to, I don't think we're combating or fighting menopause, right? But I think we want to make it as good of an experience as possible, maximize it. Right. And doing that, if we're really going to do that, we really have to give these things an honest shot and do them long enough to adopt them in ways that we're just kind of living them out and doing them on a regular basis. Otherwise, I don't think we're really trying, so that consistency piece is huge, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yep.
Yeah.
So right. everyone.
Well, there, we fixed menopause for you.
Going through menopause directly or indirectly. And I meant to point this out earlier, but 66% of our audience is identified as female on Anchor through the app.
Maybe you didn't.
Did I say that? And that
I thought you did.
The vast majority of our listeners are between the ages of 45 to 59. 60% of our listeners are in that age. And so, hey, we see you. We want to provide support and help you in this stage of life. So here we are. And
if you're in that stage of life, there's a really good chance you have friends or family that's in that stage of life too. Right. Like, so, we say this all the time, but if you found this helpful, like share this with them, send them a direct message, send them a link, like, hey, check this out. There's some good information for how to manage this here. Because I think people can really benefit from this. So yeah.
Right. Okay. Do you have a meaning in the mundane this week? Of course you do. Do you?
Of course I do. Do I ever not? Have I ever not once in the history of Middleish? I've never had to say, you go first, because I don't have one. Have I? That doesn't sound like me. No. Mine was actually last night. So we didn't have, Lila didn't have school for 3 days because of the hurricane. Like everything's like dry now, but her school still doesn't have power. So they cancel again today. So she and Kathleen had a sleepover in our room, and I slept up in Lila's room last night. So I just kind of had some space to myself, and I wasn't in a bad place, but it's been kind of stressful week, and there were just some things, and so I texted my best friend Ryan. I was like, "Hey man, you up? You got some time to chat?" And we just wound up talking for like an hour, like till 12:30 last night, like for an hour and a half, and not even really about anything that was going on, just chatting and laughing and being serious and being stupid and just being best friends and what best friends do. And it was just a reminder of kind of like you talked about, like that when you really get to engage with somebody and connect with somebody. Because I just felt a lot better afterwards. Nothing was fixed or solved, but it was just like I engaged in a place where I know it's a happy place, it's a supportive place, it's a trusted place. And it's just nice when those kind of conversations that don't really have any point have a lot of value. And I think that just kind of echoed that importance of just being with people you love and you care about and interacting with them, even if it's not for a point, it can just be very therapeutic, So it was just a nice reminder of the power of a conversation.
I love that. Yes.
Yeah.
It's really great to have those people in your life that you can just be with, even when, there are times when I'll call up a friend or I'll kind of text and there's something kind of plaguing me or on my mind. I'm troubled for whatever reason. And I think that I just want to talk about that thing. Like I want to get something off my chest, or I want to, have someone to sort of voice this concern to, or talk about this problem. But sometimes I just want to just chat with that person and just kind of be in the same space of somebody that I know sort of loves and accepts me unconditionally. I don't have to talk about the thing. I just need to be with that person in some capacity. Yeah.
Yep.
It's good stuff.
And yeah. In fact, I texted this morning. I was like, "Hey man, thanks for talking. Like it helped a lot." He was like, "Yeah, it helps sometimes when people are, I can identify with you and that kind of stuff." I was like, "Yeah, but honestly, just kind of bullshit. And sometimes is the real magic, and just carving out a moment to just really enjoy something.
Magical bullshit.
Magical
that
bullshit.
Is going on a cup, a mug of some kind. Magical bullshit. Y'all heard it here first.
I like that. All right.
So
how about you?
Matt and I went for a bike ride this weekend, and I'm trying to remember. I think it was Saturday. So it was after the party. We kind of had a lazy Saturday around the house, and I was showing Matt this new route to get out of our new neighborhood, because there's this little secret path that you have to know exactly where to go to get there and to, cut off to some safe cycling streets. And so we rode from the house, went for a mountain bike ride. And on the way back, we were like, hey, this food truck is supposed to be at this new little, there's a housing development out east of us, and it has like a food truck park that has all these different food trucks. I'm like, we're supposed to go to this barbecue place that my friend tells me about. So we just rode our bikes out there and, grabbed it. It was packed. There's, there's live music. There's just like tons of families and people around the tables. And so we just grabbed a table and stood there. There were no chairs. We just stood there, got our food from the food truck. And, it's kind of that nice, just mild summer evening, summer's winding down, so it cools off quickly. The sun's going down and the band starts playing this, like, some of Matt's jam. Like he loves, what is the station he listens? Oh, he's going to kill me. The station he listens to on satellite radio. That's like, metal or something. It's not metal. Anyway, starts playing covered songs that he's just like, yeah, he's not really like a dancer or like jamming to anything, but he like gets into it, starts, nodding his head. And he's like, these guys are good. They're really getting into it. And, anyway, we just had the best time, and we're like out in this dirt parking lot with these food trucks and this like local live cover band, playing Hair Nation. That's the station he loves, Hair Nation. So you get an idea of the butt rock or whatever we're listening to.
Yeah.
And it was just such a delightful, simple evening, just go for a
Mhm.
bike ride. Let's hang out. And I turned to him at one point. I was like, I just love Boise. Like, I just love this opportunity that was kind of
Yeah.
unplanned, and hey, let's go do this. And here we are in this dirt parking lot, just loving our lives right now. So
Mhm.
that was fun.
That's super fun.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, food trucks are awesome. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, let's just get that out of the way. Like, they're amazing, right? Like, you find some of the best food at food trucks. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, what a great experience. How fun to just stumble into something. Like when you just like kind of like it's not planned
Like, hey,
and you
let's
just
just go do this. We'll check it
yeah,
out. Yeah.
and you wind up being like, "Oh, this is really awesome.
I
That's
know.
so fun. I was not
Yeah.
expecting this."
I
Nice. I
know.
love it.
It's great.
Cool.
So thanks for
All
the
right.
discussion.
Thank you, everybody.
Good
Yeah.
topic.
Thanks
Share
for
and
listening.
rate and give us some feedback. Let us know that you like
Hmm.
what you're hearing, and I don't
Yep.
know, throw out some topic suggestions. We'd love to
Yep.
hear from you.
We'd love to hear them. Cool.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank y'all.